Jai Hind everyone and welcome back. We are halfway through the story Iswaran, the Storyteller, written by R.K. Laxman. And till where we had finished in our previous class, we had already been met with the extraordinary storytelling prowess of Iswaran, one of the two characters of the story. The other one being Mahendra, of course. We had seen how dramatically Iswaran had narrated the incidents of the fallen tree on the highway. Then there was that unbelievably brave account of his confrontation, or rather, a one sided battle between him and the Tusker. And not to forget, he was still in junior school at that time, right? So it was all about the suspense, mystery, and surprise ending that he provided to all his stories that had Mahendra completely in his thrall. So let's proceed to discover what lies ahead in the story. We are on page 15 of your book, Moments. Not a day passed without Iswaran recounting some story packed with adventure, horror, and suspense. Whether the story was credible or not, Mahendra enjoyed listening to it because of the inimitable way in which it was told. Now, what is credible? Credible is true. So, the author is saying that Mahendra did not mind listening to the of Iswaran, whether they were true, whether they seemed true or credible or not. He just enjoyed listening to it because of the inimitable way. Inimitable, something that cannot be imitated or something that cannot be copied. So, unique. Because of the inimitable way in which it was told. Iswaran seemed to more than make up for the absence of a TV in Mahendra's quarters. So, if you set a comparison, obviously Iswaran could do way more than what a TV would be doing to a person's life. One morning, when Mahendra was having breakfast, Iswaran asked, "Can I make something special for dinner tonight, sir? After all, today is an auspicious day. According to tradition, we prepare various delicacies to feed the spirits of our ancestors today, sir." So, in Hindu tradition, this time is also called as the Pitri Paksh, right? That night, Mahendra enjoyed the most delicious dinner and complimented Iswaran on his culinary skills, that is, his cooking skills. He seemed very pleased, but unexpectedly launched into a most garish account involving the supernatural. Well, after having that nice meal, he had actually shifted to a nice feeling, to a very pleasant feeling. But then all of a sudden, because of Iswaran's, idiosyncrasies, he was launched into a most garish account. Garish, something that is nauseating, something that is very unpleasant. Garish account involving the supernatural. So he all of a sudden started telling a tale of a ghostly tale. You know, sir, this entire factory area we are occupying was once a burial ground. He started. Mahendra was jerked out of the pleasant reverie he had drifted into after the satisfying meal. So he was jerked out, means he came out all of a sudden, as if he was forced out to come out of that nice feeling, pleasant reverie, thoughts. I knew on the first day itself when I saw a human skull lying on the path. Even now I come across a number of skulls and bones, Iswaran continued. So this is how he made his story seem convincing. He said that I knew it from the very first day because I had encountered a lot of skulls and bones of several deceased humans. He went on to narrate how he sometimes saw ghosts at night. I am not easily frightened by these things, sir. Then he tries to defend himself, or he would be taken for a person who was easily frightened by ghosts. He says that I'm not that frightened of ghosts generally. I'm a brave fellow. But one horrible ghost of a woman which appears off and on at midnight during the full moon, it's an ugly creature with matted hair, so rough, charred hair, and a shriveled face or a wrinkled face. like a skeleton holding a fetus in its arms. What a description! I mean, an old woman who is obviously dead, she's a ghost, and she has matted hair and she has wrinkled face and she is, almost like a skeleton. She's very thin, she is reed thin, and she holds what in her arms? A bundle sort of a thing, which has been termed as fetus, that is an unborn baby, an unborn child, and it holds it in its arms. Mahendra shivered at the description and interrupted rather sharply. You are crazy, Iswaran. There are no such things as ghosts or spirits. It is all a figment of your imagination. He just discarded this theory downright as if he did not believe in it even for a moment. And he stopped Iswaran midway. Mahendra stopped Iswaran midway and he rather chided him, scolded him by saying that there is no such things as ghosts or spirits. It's all a figment of your imagination. That means it's all a creation of what your mind is compelling you to think or feel or see. Get your digestive system examined and maybe your head as well. You are talking all nonsense. So just get all of you examined and checked, get your head checked, because what you're saying is quite bizarre. It is so strange that it is absolutely unbelievable. He left the room and retired for the night, expecting Iswaran to sulk for a couple of days. But the next morning he was surprised to find the cook as cheerful and talkative as ever. So sulk means to be annoyed or to be in a bad temper, to hold some grudges against someone and then not talk to them nicely for a few days. So why did Mahendra think that Iswaran would have such kind of a temper for a few days to come? Because never before that was Iswaran chided or scolded like that ever, by Mahendra. This was the first time that he had yelled on him. But the next morning he was surprised to find the cook as cheerful and talkative as ever, as if nothing had happened. That was quite strange. From that day on, Mahendra, for all his brave talk, went to bed with a certain unease. Now, obviously, he had been told a very, scary, frightening, garish tale of that kind of a woman, right? So it is but natural that even though he was on the face saying that it did not affect him, that he did not believe in ghosts, but every night that he went to bed with a certain unease, uncomfortable feeling. Every night he peered into the darkness outside through the window next to his bed, trying to make sure that there was no movement of dark shapes in the vicinity or in the area nearby him. But all he could see was a sea of darkness with the twinkling lights of the factory miles away. So he did not find anything suspicious or something that he should be worried about, right? He had always liked to admire the milk-white landscape on full moon nights. He had liked, admired those full moon nights. But after hearing Iswaran's story of the female ghost, he avoided looking out of the window altogether when the night was full. So you can see that Iswaran's story has actually had an impact on Mahendra's mind and psyche. One night, Mahendra was woken up from his sleep by a low moan, by a strange sort of a sound close to his window. At first, he put it down to a cat prowling around for mice. First, he thought that it was probably a cat that was, taking out that guttural sound and looking for or searching for mice. But the sound was too guttural, harsh for a cat. He resisted the curiosity to look out lest he should behold a sight which would stop his heart. He sort of knew, deep down he knew that I shouldn't be looking outside. Because if I do, then I will see something which I would never ever want to see. Right? But the wailing became louder and less feline. Wailing over here, it means, the cry, the shout that was coming from the outside. It became louder and less feline. Feline is, it became less cat-like. He could not resist the temptation anymore. He had to see where the sound was coming from. Lowering himself to the level of the windowsill, he looked out at the white sheet of moonlight outside. There, not too far away, notice, was a dark, cloudy form clutching a bundle. So, what was it? It was the same ghost that Iswaran had talked about the other day to Mahendra. Mahendra broke into a cold sweat. He became very nervous and fell back on the pillow. Panting, as he gradually recovered from the ghastly experience, he began to reason with himself and finally concluded that it must have been some sort of auto suggestion. Now, he was a reasonable kind of a person and a very practical one as well. He knew that there couldn't be an actual ghost, and since he was told a story of the same ghost by Iswaran, not along, not quite a few days back, it was a very recent thing that had happened to him. So his mind must have compelled him to see what was there all along inside his head. So it was an auto-suggestion. It was a manifestation of the fear that he was harboring inside of his heart and mind. And he himself knew that this is what must have happened. Some trick that his subconscious had played on him. So subconscious is that part of the brain that is quite inaccessible to us. We are not aware of it, but it affects our minds and thoughts. It deeply affects our thoughts. By the time he had got up in the morning, had a bath, and came out to have his breakfast, the horror of the previous night had faded from his memory. Iswaran greeted him at the door with his lunch packet and his bag. Now, by the next morning, he had become almost normal, and though he might not have forgotten, but that ghastly experience must have faded from his mind. And then, when Iswaran was about to hand him over, his bag and his tiffin box and all, something happened. Iswaran said something. Just as Mahendra was stepping out, Iswaran grinned. That means he smiled, showing all his teeth, baring all his teeth, and said, "Sir, remember the other day when I was telling you about the female ghost with a fetus in its arms? You were so angry with me for imagining things. How did you know? Well, you saw her yourself last night." And there it was. It was not just seen by Mahendra, it was now apparently seen by Iswaran as well. And therefore, one cannot outright deny the fact there was indeed the ghost. The ghost was indeed there. That fact couldn't have been now erased off. So, I came running, hearing the sound of moaning that was coming from your room, right? A chill went down Mahendra's spine. Now, how did Iswaran come to know that there was a ghost, or that Mahendra had actually seen the ghost? Because he too heard the same sort of noise, that moaning sound that was coming from outside of the window of Mahendra. And when he heard that, he too came running by. And what did he see? He saw Mahendra seeing the ghost. And so obviously he told this entire thing to Mahendra. Now Mahendra cannot say that it simply was an auto-suggestion. Now auto-suggestion could have been the case had only Mahendra seen it. But now it was also someone else who has seen Mahendra seeing the ghost. Right? So a chill went down Mahendra's spine. He became very frightened beyond imagination. He did not wait for Iswaran to complete his sentence. He hurried away to his office and handed in his papers. That means he put his papers of resignation. He wouldn't be working over there anymore. And he left the very next day, resolving to leave the haunted place the very next day. Right? It indeed was a very, gripping story, I would say. And every point about it was absolutely very well woven. Right? Now, children, if I ask you that how would you explain the occurrence of the ghost? So I had a few of the things that struck me and I would like to share with you. So let us talk about the whys and whereofs of the ghost's occurrence. Whys and whereofs means the reasons of the ghost's sighting or even occurrence, right? First of all, it was the manifestation of Mahendra's hidden fears. The one that he himself acknowledges, the one that is the most apparent and the most obvious reason that there was actually no ghost. And why did he see the ghost only after Iswaran had talked to him about it. Why did he see after that? Why did he not see before that? If he at all had to see it, why did the ghost make its appearance only after Mahendra was informed or told that there was one ghost, right? So it was perhaps Mahendra's, it was, this is how his hidden fears got manifested, got materialized. The next one is Iswaran himself played the ghost. He tricked his master with a practical joke. Now, if I talk about the phrase practical joke, what are you reminded of? Well, I am certainly reminded of the first chapter of class 8 that you had studied, the open window. So, who plays the practical joke on whom? Vera plays the practical joke on Mr. Frampton Nuttall, right? So, here too, I believe that Iswaran played this practical joke with Mahendra, and he was simply perhaps bored and he wanted some color in his life. So all he could play the trick on was Mahendra. There was no one else, around. So he got just Mahendra and he did what he had to do. So he himself played the ghost. That is one of the possibilities. He described the ghost so very well, and he was a person who had a mysterious side to him as well. If you remember in the first part of the story, like in the first lesson that we had for this story, we had seen that he could conjure up or produce vegetables out of nothing. There was nothing around, there was no grocery shop, there was no vegetable market, and they were there in that very, desolate, lonely place, and still he managed to produce some fresh vegetables. And within an hour of arriving at a particular shelter, he also managed to cook a wonderful dish. How can one do that? It does need some time, right? You have to actually settle down and then you can think of producing or cooking a meal. And there are other sides to his personality as well that will compel you to think that he does have the caliber to do something of this sort, right? Well, these are the two possible reasons that I could think of, but I would love to hear out your versions of it as well. Do share with me if you have any, if you come across with any. Now, if we move on to the themes, see, this is not a very serious sort of a chapter. It's a comedy. It has a lot of humorous elements in it. And therefore, let us keep it quite light. Let us keep it on a lighter note. If we think from Iswaran's point of view, then there is one thing that we certainly can learn from him. That is the art of storytelling. And he proves that out of all the arts in the world, storytelling is certainly one, right? So it's not just a story, but the way you narrate it, the way you put it across to your readers makes all the difference, right? And he excelled in that art par excellence. The next one is, if you think from the perspective of Mahendra, we should not let others influence our beliefs and convictions. So, you see, suppose I believe in ghosts, then I shouldn't let others make me believe that there actually are no ghosts. If I am a staunch believer of the facts that if there is God, if there is something positive, then there is obviously something negative as well. So if I believe in that concept, then I will not let one of my friends or one of my relatives make me convince, on the other hand, that there isn't actually any. And then on the other hand, suppose I do not believe in ghosts. I might believe that there is something there in the air, but we cannot call it a ghost, or we cannot look at it the way they are portrayed in so many movies and stories, or the way we are made to believe it. I do not believe in ghosts and spirits. So I should not let others make me believe in that too. Others will certainly have their versions of stories. One might come across to me and say that I had once seen a ghost of some dead relative and he or she talked to me, waved at me. But that shouldn't make me believe the same as well. I should stand by my convictions and my stance. So these are the two themes that you can think of. Again, if there are any more that strike you, do share. So with this, we come to the end. We conclude this story, Iswaran the Storyteller, written by the marvelous R.K. Laxman. Thank you.